Welcome to Find Your Strong, the podcast for anyone ready to ditch diet culture and find a kinder way to care for themselves.
We're Christine and Ella. Ella is a nutritionist.
And Christine is a personal trainer.
And we're both also intuitive eating counsellors and ready to be your guides through this wild and wonderful non-diet space.
Every week we talk real-life well-being with experts, guests and each other, all with compassion and zero judgment.
So if you're ready, let's find your strong.
Hi and welcome to another episode of the Find Your Strong podcast. Today we're very excited to have the wonderful Trey Joseph on our pod and have a great conversation with him. To let you know about Trey, he's a strength and fitness coach, a personal trainer and behaviour change specialist who's all in on making exercise enjoyable, accessible and inclusive. As a queer transgender man who transitioned later in life, he knows what it's like to live in a marginalised body and how intimidating working out can feel, especially when you're just starting or you don't feel at home in mainstream fitness spaces. What Trey loves most about working out is how it supports his mental and emotional health, and he wholeheartedly believes that everyone deserves the freedom and resources to move their body in a way that's right for them. That's why his coaching style is client-centered, compassion-led, and designed to build confidence, and every workout he coaches is designed to feel safe, fun, and zero pressure. He's 1/3 of the Strength Crew coaching team, along with his wife Emma and dog Dexy, super cute by the way. He offers online fitness classes as well as one-to-one sessions, and we will put his details in the show notes for you so you can follow him and find out more about him. We had a great conversation. Hope you enjoyed it.
Welcome, Trey. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks.
Yeah, we are very excited to have you here, aren't we, Ella?
Oh
Ella can't
yes,
speak
very
today.
excited. We'd love to talk to you about everything that you do because it is absolutely wonderful. So should we go straight into it? And can you tell us a little bit about the Strengths Crew?
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, it's a work in progress. So
Love
it's
that.
evolving, it's evolving by the day. So a Strength Crew is basically online classes and it will be personal training as well because Emma, my wife, is on board and she enjoys personal training. So there'll be some one-to-one stuff, but my vibe is very much going to be about doing classes. So strength classes, and I'm going to try and do um strength classes that you can do either body weight or with a band or with a kettlebell or a dumbbell all at once, basically. So I'm not sure how I'm going to demonstrate all of that all at the same time, but I think it's possible. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
it's possible. Because I just want people to be able to come with whatever they've got and then just be able to do a half-hour strength workout using whatever they happen to have around. Like even if it's a water bottle or whatever. Doesn't really matter. Because I've always been of the mind that we don't need any extra barriers when it comes to exercise. So you know how people sometimes are like, oh, I haven't got the right kit, so we don't actually need any. Or if it's a kettlebell class, it's like I haven't got a kettlebell, but I have got a resistance band. It's like cool, bring along and mix and match. So yeah, so there'll be that, and then we're going to do some kind of cardio classes and getting cardio off. So Christine, this was basically inspired by your cozy cardio idea, which I had never ever come across before in my life. But just you know how cardio tends to live just as a stationary bike slash rowing machine slash cross trainer type vibe, and it doesn't need to. It can just be you in the middle of the room, like just moving around in all different directions. And I think that's really something that we need to be more. We do need to do more because it's kind of revolutionary, really, I think. Because usually you'd only really do that kind of movement in warm-ups, but like you can actually make an entire class out of it, mixing kickboxing and stuff. So there'll be that, and then mobility work, because I definitely notice as I'm getting older that if I don't attend to my own mobility, stuff tends to hurt a bit more.
Oh,
Picture of all those three.
Yeah, and we had that just before we hit record, we were talking all about age and how we feel about movement as we age. But the cozy cardio, interestingly, came from, it was, I think, an influencer online who had coined the phrase cozy cardio, and what she did was get like her favorite drink and like spent ages making this like hazelnut latte drink, and then got her favorite show on the TV and had like a walking machine. So it wasn't even a treadmill, it was something that she could walk on. And she did that for half an hour every day and just made it as cozy for herself as possible. And I loved that.
Yeah.
I think that's great. I think it's very accessible for anybody who's not actually been into exercise or movement. It feels like a really safe way to get into it because it's not the sort of, leotard hit workout kind of crew. It's very much like, well, just get your heart rate up a little bit and just move and do something that is actually enjoyable. I love that so much. And also what you just said about do whatever you can with whatever you've got available.
Mm.
I love that so much because I don't have all of the gear, and I would probably not join certain classes because I think, oh, I haven't got that weight, I haven't got that. I've only got a couple of tins of beans, and being able to do the exercise with that, with what I've got available, would make it a lot more accessible for me personally, because I would say, oh, okay, I can join in then. I don't have to go out and spend 200 quid on exercise equipment. So I
Yeah.
love that it makes it a lot more accessible for people to join that sort of
Yeah.
class.
I've always been interested in making things more accessible
Mm.
because I think the fitness industry does tend to be like, well, it has to be done in this way. When I was coming up as a sort of first off in personal training, which is nearly 20 years ago, it was very much taught to me in one way. And
Mm.
as soon as I started training like actual people, I realized, well, you've given me the ideal. You've given me the textbook human that doesn't exist. I don't think I've ever met anyone that I had coached via the textbook examples.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you start working with people, you realize there's back pain and there's chronic stress and there's I had a bad day and emotional kind of inputs and my toe hurts, which is my thing at the moment.
Yeah.
And people would walk into the gym where I was waiting to be their personal trainer for the hour, and I would have a plan written out. And then as soon as I met them and asked them how they were doing and how their day had been, I'd have to rewrite my whole plan because
Yeah.
something had come up, right, that I wouldn't have
Mm.
factored in. And so I just think accessibility is enormous, and I don't think kind of it's attended to that much, especially
Mm.
in gyms. My gym that I used to work in was up 2 flights of stairs. So, and it had the turnstiles. So it's failed twice on accessibility as soon as you even walk through the door,
Gosh.
right?
Yeah.
And it just used to annoy me.
Mm.
Oh, I can't have it. I
Mm.
really struggle with the gym. There's a gym that I was a member of for a while, which had a little locked entrance thing where you went through the first door and you were in this little tight area
Yeah.
with, if you had a rucksack on your back, you could hardly go in. So
Mm.
anybody who wasn't in a straight size body could not get in through that door. So they'd have to ring a different, it just really pissed me off. Sorry. Oh, I can say that. It's my
You can. It's
You,
our
you can say
podcast. You can say whatever you want.
that. I was going to check actually. Are we allowed to?
Oh,
Oh yeah.
100%.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we encourage it, in fact.
Oh, very
Yes.
good. Cool. But no, it used to do my head in as well.
Yeah.
Um, and even so, I'm one of the things I used to do was I used to coach coaches and would write some of the curriculum for that as well. And we had this whole module about as soon as you say like I'm going to make an accommodation in this workout, the person is like, well, okay, you have to accommodate me. And I'm like, I don't ever want to make anyone feel like they're being accommodated. Exercise should accommodate from the very get-go.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of language, I think, in fitness that immediately makes people feel like othered or
Yes.
pushed to the sidelines. It's like, this isn't for you, but we'll make it for you by putting in some accommodations. And I never
Mm.
liked that. So, yeah, I kind of want everything I do to be as open as possible from the very start so that no one ever comes in thinking, am I supposed to be here? It's like,
Yeah.
yes, you are. You're very welcome. And that's the vibe I'm going for.
Love that.
Mm.
I love
That's
that so
brilliant.
much. Because it
So you've
is,
been, sorry, go
sorry.
on.
I think, I don't know if you've always had that mindset, or if that's something that has more.
That's what I was going to ask, Christine.
There you go.
Oh,
We're in sync.
Great minds.
at the beginning, when you kind of just trained, were you, I mean, how long did it take you to go, oh, hold on, I can't just do this this particular template and work out with everybody. I need to absolutely tailor it to every individual depending on their day, what's going on with them. Did that
Practically
come?
from the very first set of clients I had, like, so the very first client I had, didn't tell me that she was dealing with quite a serious chronic health condition because she thought I would not train her because of it. And that was the very first client I had. It took her about 6 months to actually tell me. Even, you know, we'd done the PARQ and everything like that, and we had a really good relationship, but she was just worried that I wouldn't allow her to train with me if I knew that she had this condition. And she was quite, in terms of like the things she could do. I remember I did have a very traditional program. You know how we kind of like, you start with the bigger muscles and you work down to the smaller muscles and you do all of that stuff. And we worked in this really little gym. It was like a boutique gym in the back of Worcester. And so we kind of had quite limited equipment, but it was very traditional. But just working with her, I'm like, well, I'm having to do all sorts of things that don't fit what the textbooks say. And so I found I was a bit flummoxed by it, the fact that kind of the textbook and my training had taught me to do it this way, but it didn't really fit when I was trying to apply it to a human. So as soon as I started, I noticed that because every client I had was completely different. So I had one guy, I remember training him, and he had like his ability to connect with his body wasn't as well developed as someone like me. I've been doing sports and stuff since I was a kid, and so I would say, if you try and put your weight into your heels, and he did this, and I'm like, that's really interesting. I'm not sure why the shoulders have suddenly involved themselves when we're trying to work with the heels, but okay. And everything that he tried, I could see him trying really hard to do what I was asking, and it would always come out in a really unusual manifestation.
Wow.
And so I was
So
like, okay.
interesting.
So yeah, every client teaches you something, don't they? About
Every
how you
client.
practice what you do. But then, yeah, certainly in recent years, my awareness has accelerated towards um, more diversity and kind of how I work with different communities and so on. It's definitely come on much more in the last few years.
Yeah. And do you want to tell us a bit more about that, Trey, and who you kind of work with and why it's so important to you? And
Yeah. So I was started coaching around 2007. 2007? I get my dates mixed up. Yeah, 2007. Just on my own, just coaching like on the side. I work for local government, as you do. Just coaching on the side, um, whoever I could kind of, find to work with in my community. And then I went to work for a big box gym and gave up my local government career and became a personal trainer full time. And I was a very traditional personal trainer. So like I worked in the usual spaces that personal trainers worked in, right? The usual kinds of population, the usual types of goals. Um, and then I got a job working for an online coaching company and worked with them for quite a long time, for about 6 or 7 years, coaching coaches and coaching people and writing curriculum and doing all sorts of things like that. And I was still pretty much in the kind of traditional spaces, although my coaching abilities were growing and I was much more working outside of what we see as traditional in personal training, and I became like a compassion-based coach and someone who kind of, I was much more interested in how to build confidence in movement than I was anything else. Like I was really interested in how you help people develop those kind of cognitive skills that support what they're doing from a movement perspective, and emotional skills and stuff like that. And then I left that company, partly because I got made redundant. So there was that.
yeah.
That was part of why I left. But I left my coaching role there because I transitioned and I couldn't coach there because I coached women, because at that company, women coach women and men coached men. And so when I transitioned from female to male, which is let's not get into that whole
Yeah.
can of worms about whether that's the correct phrase, but meant I couldn't stay in my coaching career. And also you can't, I don't think, well, I couldn't go through such a heavy emotional process and continue holding space for people's
Yeah.
emotions and needs and complex change processes that they were going through. Just wasn't going to work. So I backed right off from coaching and I stopped coaching for about 2 years, I think. And then when I came back into it, like my entire world has changed. So I'm not living in the same world and I'm not the same person as I was. Even though there's quite a lot of people who will say things like, oh, you're the same. And you're the same person as you were. I don't see why I'd have any issue with you. And you're like, I'm not the same person
No.
I was. And nothing about me is the same. And something about transitioning for me that was really interesting is how it changed my brain. So things don't look the same to me, things don't feel the same.
Wow.
And some of those things are very understandable. So it's a very stressful process. Transition is very stressful at the moment anyway, living in the world as a transgender person. And so the impact of chronic stress, right, on my brain. That's something I've noticed. I can't concentrate as well. Kind of neurodiverse traits that I've always had have kind of become much more prominent. And so I suddenly started seeing the world from a different perspective because I had challenges that I didn't necessarily realize I had before, like they were there, but I was able to move through them differently. But also my sense of justice just like shot up from a regular level, like a regular high level to extremely high level. And now I find it impossible not to see it when it presents itself. And so then when I started to look at the fitness industry with that perspective, I'm like, oh, look at all this stuff that I wasn't noticing before. And so that was quite a big thing. And you see parallels. So there's parallels between transgender community and all other marginalized communities, right? So especially within, you see it in the fitness industry as a little microcosm. And I started to notice I wasn't comfortable going into the gym anymore. I've always been comfortable in gyms, and I was the one who would take people into the weight room and just be like, this is our space. We are allowed to use this. And people would come and work with me if they wanted to feel more confident accessing the weights room, which was really small in the gym I was in. Like this tiny little enclosed space that felt very claustrophobic, and it was very ego heavy in there. You could feel it as soon as you set foot in it. And I used to just march in there and be like, come on, we're using this squat rack. And I would glare at anyone who had the nerve to suggest that me and my clients weren't supposed to be in there. And actually what I found was most of the people in there were absolutely fine. Every now and then you'd get someone with a bit of an ego trip. But generally speaking, everyone was okay. It was more a perception thing. But now I don't want to set foot in the weight room. I've been to gyms recently. I don't want to be in there because there's a period you go through where you're like, I'm not sure if I'm successfully passing within these gender norms that are being demonstrated in this space. And I don't know if I'm giving off the right, I don't know, vibes here. And also I don't feel at home there. That's not my space. That's not, I don't vibe with any of the kind of atmosphere in those spaces anymore. And I just don't feel comfortable. I don't feel comfortable in changing rooms, and because I started to be aware of that in my own life, I've become much more aware of it in the lives of other people who may have different reasons for not enjoying those spaces.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Went off on the houses there.
Yeah, but that must make you incredibly compassionate to what your clients might be experiencing on whatever level they're experiencing it, because yours is up there, as you said, you've got such a heightened sense of justice or injustice, whatever, whichever way we look at it. So do you feel like those spaces, is it mostly the fact that you don't really, there's, as you said, you're not vibing with the kind of people that go to those spaces anymore? Or is there a sense of that that you wouldn't be accepted in those spaces as someone who has the right to use it just like everybody else? What can you sort of speak to that? What sort of
Yeah, I
aspect of that is sort of dominant for you?
think it's both.
Ah,
So it's the herd I run with and the people I feel most at home with are queer and trans people.
mm-hmm,
And we don't know where each other are usually.
mm,
But I can probably fairly safely say that I'm the only person in any gym space at any given time.
mm-hmm,
Well, certainly where I live, but even in a bigger city. So when I go back to Worcester,
mm-hmm,
the odds are, given, that we're sort of, that trans men are 0.04% of the population, and trans
Wow.
generally are 0.1% of the population.
okay,
If I'm in a room, I'm probably on my own.
yeah,
So it's largely the fact that my kind of community aren't there.
mm,
And also the fact, especially now, as the world is getting more hostile, that I don't know if I'm safe there
yeah,
or not. And so therefore I have to make sure that I'm covering my back.
yeah,
So I tend to wear like things which will mark me out. But
Mm-hmm.
as soon as I go into a toilet or go into a space, I'll either take it off or I'll turn it over. Because there's certain safety needs I have before I will kind of mark myself out.
mm,
I won't be doing that in any gyms, unless it's a
mm,
queer gym specifically.
Yeah.
mm,
But I don't have one of those where I live, and I
mm.
don't know where the nearest one is. I think probably London, probably, or
Wow.
Brighton. I'm,
Brighton.
but
Mm,
Yeah.
like I'm
God.
a million miles from that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's definitely like if I wouldn't be taking my shirt off in a guy's changing room
mm-hmm,
because I have top surgery scars that run from one armpit to the other. So I would draw attention probably, and I don't know if the attention I would draw would be fist bumps and good for you, man, or
mm,
whether it would be more hostile.
mm-hmm,
So yeah, and even just knowing, so I don't do that, I don't put myself in that situation, but even knowing that that is a possibility tends to put me off
mm,
going into
yeah,
places like that. And yeah, I'm definitely not the only person,
No.
and my reasons are not the only reasons why you draw attention in a gym space that isn't very kind.
mm,
I remember all my clients used to be worried about people looking at them
Mm.
mm,
and making judgments on them and
mm,
making judgments on what they were capable of, or you know what I
mm,
mean? And I've always been very sensitive to that and very protective, but now I'm just about 1,000 times more.
yeah.
I first of all, you should come live in Brighton, please.
Thought
Brighton is,
about it.
nowhere is perfect, but certainly it's quite an open place. I think I'm very happy to live here. That's all. And I was going to say that I've started boxing recently,
Ooh.
which is brilliant. But I work with this trainer who runs a gym called Team Queen, and she is passionate about opening that space for marginalised groups. So works with queer people, trans people, non-binary, gender non-conforming, and straight people if they're inclusive and if they are. And it was really interesting. The first time that I came, I was like, I wasn't sure, is it okay because I'm straight? And and she's like, oh, we should put it on the website so it's clear. And I'm like, no, you don't have to make it easier for straight people. It's all right. But it was just this quite different position to be in that I really enjoyed. And it's a space that I feel so safe in because I struggle to go into gyms, and that's ridiculous given that I'm from a training background, but I really don't find them a space that I feel comfortable in at all. But this one, I immediately just felt so comfortable and at ease and at home. And it is so, as yours, everything that you've said there, it really is resonated and also touched me, what you've had to go through and how you can bring that experience to your clients is just, yeah, I think you've got some lucky clients you'd be working with, Trey.
Well, I think it's interesting what you say, because one of the things that one of my mentors used to say quite a lot is whenever, and I've heard this in various places, but she was the one that taught it me, is whenever you make anything more accessible or more inclusive, it feels that way to everybody. So you kind of pick up on that vibe, right? If you have to really think about how you are making your practice accepting and loving towards people from marginalized communities, that will be felt by those who have less marginalized identities, even if that, like we all kind of experience it in some ways, right? Um, and one of the things that's you made me think there, I am quite conscious in when as I've been putting together Strength Crew, but just as a coach as well, in how I've been promoting my own coaching services. I really do want to work with more trans people and more queer people. And I have got a fairly strong client base in that area. But also I want to work with people who are cisgender and, of all sexualities, basically, including heterosexual people. And because I don't feel like, I mean, if I'm inclusive, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But there then has to be some thought given to, how do I keep this space safe?
Safe. Yes.
And so one of the things I was thinking is, in as part of my onboarding, because I want, basically what I'm saying then is that I want to work with trans people, queer people, and allies,
Yeah.
because the only people who will be welcome in the space will be allies. And to be an ally is quite an active role. And it means being active enough in your understanding of queer and trans identities that you don't accidentally cause harm. And I have accidentally had harm caused to me more times than I can even count at this point, usually by very well-meaning people, but that doesn't make any difference.
Yeah.
Still dings you out in ways that you have to recover from. So I was like, well, how do I do that then? How do I make a space as safe as I can possibly make it? And one of the things I used to write as part of curriculum work is how, for coaches, how you work with queer and trans people and gender diverse people. And so I will be writing something similar, which is, if you, part of the onboarding for anyone who isn't from within the queer and trans community, but maybe also from those people, because not everyone who's in the community either knows how to be a really true ally to other people within the community, is like a certain kind of, just a very, very short thing on kind of allyship and how we look after each other. Because it's, the thing sometimes people say to you, you're just like, wow. Clearly, this is the first time you've thought about it, and I am your Google search for the things that you don't know, and you don't seem to realize that by asking me those things, you're actually causing me quite a lot of pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I cannot have that in my class. Do you know what I mean? Or in any community that I'm kind of leading. So I think how we think about that when we run things that we say are trans inclusive and queer inclusive, it's really important. How we make it safe when we pull allies in as well.
Oh, that's a really interesting. We had this a chat with Doris Milner. I'm probably not saying that right. Last week, and she's a trauma informed yoga teacher, and we were talking about safe spaces and what it means for her to create a safe space, and talked about consent and talked about so many other different things.
Yeah.
And it's so important, and I love that you're sort of defining it. And but if you're creating a space for queer and trans people and gender non-conforming people, exactly that, it has to be a safe space for those people. And yeah, it's really making me think about that. And I like I like that idea of kind of as you're onboarding,
Mm,
having that. So that's a really interesting way to approach it. But I like that.
Yeah, I need to give it some more thought. Um,
Yeah.
but actually, I took a course, was it last year? Must have been the trauma-informed weightlifting course. Got
Ah.
that course and I thought it was really good.
mm,
And thinking about consent, and one of the things that another trainer does who also works in a queer space, they always use the same warm-up as a grounding thing, right? To help people regulate and feel safe because it's like, oh, I know this. This is something that's familiar to me. And I was like, oh, that's a really good point. So yeah, making your kind of practice as safe as it can be for those who have, because when you're working with the trans community, you're working with people who have experienced a lot of trauma, and
Yeah.
that's just how it is. So,
Yeah.
but I do think it's really fascinating how we use movement to help people either kind of express or process or move away from. So that course was like phenomenal. Totally opened my eyes.
mm.
Yeah. I did. Sorry.
Sorry, yeah, I'm just thinking movement is it can be so healing, but it can also, if you don't do it right, in a sense, it can also be quite triggering, right?
Yeah.
So having that trauma-informed lens in whatever you do, I suppose, given the uh, communities that you sort of encourage to join your sessions, you need to be extra aware of that, don't you? To make
Mm,
sure that there isn't anything in there that could potentially be unsafe.
yeah. And it's tricky because obviously one person might come in needing to kind of release rage and another person might come in needing to find comfort.
Yeah.
So the movements need to be versatile enough that you can do that.
Mm. So how do you handle that then? Do you give people loads of options, or do you say, look, this is what we're doing next? Do you sort of describe what's going to happen next and say, do this if it feels safe, don't do it, do this instead? How do you approach that? Because you're right, so it's two people might come in needing completely different things in the
Mm.
same session. So that sounds quite challenging to me to deal with that as a coach.
Yeah, I think it is. And yes, I give a lot of options.
Good.
Because also I think you always do as a coach, right? Because you kind of not sure who's coming with what.
Mm.
And so even if I'm just doing a regular strength session, I will have to give options for people whose knees are sore today, or
Mm.
people whose knees are sore always, or people whose hips aren't quite as mobile, or people who have like, their back is hurting, or they have a back injury. And so you're constantly giving options and it kind of falls
Mm.
into the same bucket. But I talk a lot about energy and I talk a lot about
Mm.
kind of, but I don't call it this, but I suppose it is taking more somatic approach to it. I talk a
Mm.
lot about exploring movements and inviting people to try something
Yeah.
and I try and take as much pressure out as possible, um, because I know those things are coming in with whoever it is. There's all those kind of narratives of, oh, I should be able to do this. Well, Trey can kick really high and I can't kick really high. Does that mean I'm bad or wrong or not as good? And take all of that away by giving as many options and making sure every option is presented as equal.
Mm.
So in the fitness industry, we're really bad, I think. As a
Yeah.
general industry, right? You're kind of like, this is the easy one and this is the hard one, and the
Mhm.
hard one is the best one because
Yeah.
that is better. And you're just like, no, no. And just being very aware of my language. And so I
Mhm.
sometimes have to catch myself like mid-word because an old word will come out of my
Mm.
young personal trainer mouth. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? And I'll be like, no, don't use that word. We wouldn't use that word. Um, and it will be something like easy versus hard.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
I can't say that. So yeah, just being very thoughtful about language. All in 45 seconds. They've got work
Yeah.
set 45 seconds. I'm trying to give like 27 different options and be very conscious of your language and all of the people in the room.
Wow.
And your brain's like, zzz.
I have in boot camp, in my boot camp, like everybody makes fun of me because I always say if it's available to you. And they're always like, if it's available, is it available, Christy? Just because it is,
Yeah,
it's just something that I've just,
Mm.
it's a
just,
really good phrase.
yeah,
Mm.
I love it. I love
Yeah.
I
it.
think it is. And I think, do you know what? I always think people who know me know how big I am on language and how what we say about bodies, food, whatever is incredibly powerful.
Mm.
So I think just by repeating that and by people taking the piss out of you, whatever, but it'll sink in somewhere and maybe they will use it at some stage. Maybe they will think about, oh, if I say that, that might actually be a bit triggering. So if I use a different word or a different phrase, that might be safer, that might be better, that might be, I don't know, a nicer way of saying it. So I always think that it's all about role modeling and even, when you pull yourself back from something that is just about to come out of your mouth, just, being open about that and saying, actually, no, this is not a word that I want to use because I think
Yeah.
it's harmful. So therefore I'm going to change it, and being like transparent about it. I think it's so, so important. It's so powerful.
Mm.
I love that.
I agree with that.
Mm.
Um, do you ever get into loops though? Because sometimes I'm like, so let's challenge ourselves, but only if you want to, and not too
Yes.
much. And
Oh my gosh, I did that this morning. So we were doing something, I really needed a drink, and I was like, so feel free at any point to take a rest, grab a drink. I'm going to do that. And then as I went to get a drink, I was like, but and you carry on. And then I went, if you want to, but obviously if you want to get, like, just, and then you just have to make fun of
it's
yourself.
just, and then
And then they're laughing and you're like, yeah.
yeah,
But when you're kind of in the middle of, I don't know, maybe a little bit fatigued because you're taking part and you're trying to process 100 different things. And
yeah.
then I'll say something like, so just lift each arm as I'm lifting my leg. And I'm like, not an arm. The arms have got nothing to do with this. Legs. We're lifting our legs. Or you're saying, like, you might feel this in your calf. And then you're like, how are you going to feel this in your calf? It's a bicep. Like, the weirdest things come out
Yeah.
of
But I quite like that, and I don't know about you, but I can't count, so that kind of
No,
can't count at all.
no, no.
I
Always
think that
measure
is a personal trainer thing. I think we're just rubbish at
It
counting.
is. So I used to count on my fingers because you can't count and cue at the same time,
Yeah, it's
right?
just yeah.
And so I developed a thing where I would always count on my fingers because I can continue to talk whilst counting your reps with my fingers.
Oh,
And I've
very
taught that to
good.
several clients. And so they'll be like, what am I on? And I'm like, 15. Because I've just counted them up with my fingers whilst I'm kind of going, and just like lift your chest a little bit. There you go. That's beautiful. Just move that knee or whatever it is. And so when you watch me coach, like one to one, not in class because I tend to do it by time, I'll be doing this constantly.
Wow, that's good for the
Such a good
brain,
idea.
isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And you'll be like, cool, you're good. You can stop now.
I would confuse myself even if I count. Like if I want to count to 18 on my fingers, I'm like, have I already been at 15? No, start again. So I'd be out. I could not even do that. I'm terrible at counting reps. I just roughly feel like, do you feel like I've done the same on both sides? That's how I
Yeah,
operate generally.
roughly.
Roughly
Roughly the same.
feels about the same.
Yeah.
Um, well, I'm gonna tangent now. This is expected in these, and talk about age and pain.
Oh yes, let's go back to pre-recording
I
topics. That
just
was good.
they're quite big topics there, but
Mm.
we were talking about sort of I have a client who I'm about to turn 49, which is exciting. Um,
Me too.
I know it's so cool, isn't it?
Best year.
Yeah, you're basically it may as well be 50 though. There's no point in 49.
I disagree, but go on.
Everybody says, "Oh, what are you doing for your 50th?" It's not even turned 49 yet. And I've lost no. So my client was I'm 46, and she's like I'm 46, Christine, so I can't bend down anymore, and my knees get really sore because I'm old now. And it's like, no, you're not. And it is obviously when we get sort of beyond 30 and above, we lose muscle mass, bone density, a certain percentage, but it doesn't mean that we suddenly can't keep doing and getting up and down off the floor and doing the things we love. We just may need to take a bit more time and mobilizing and caring for our joints and
Mm.
doing all sort of tending to it. What do you feel, Trey, about that?
I think that as we get older, warm-ups get longer,
Yes.
cool downs get longer and more important, both parts.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm 45 and I will never skip a warm-up ever. I used to
Mm.
when I was younger. And sometimes, even recently, I noticed I was still skipping cool downs. Not skipping them, but like finishing and then finishing and then pretty much just going like, cool, and then going off to find some food or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the next day I'll be like, I'm really sore, but not in a muscle soreness way, in a joint way.
Yes.
My
Oh,
hips hurt and my back hurts. And so I was like, I think I'm not attending to my needs appropriately as a
Mm.
45-year-old man. And so now I don't skip that, and
mm,
things do feel better. So yeah, I think as we get older, you can train just as hard, and you can still achieve just as much, like in terms of strength gains and whatever else, mobility gains, all those sorts of things, if you want to. But if you are going to, the harder you push yourself, the more you're going to need to recover.
mm,
You can't get away with things that maybe we could,
mm,
with the kids. That's
mm.
not, it's just not a thing. Um, but yeah, I don't see why age needs to restrict us from doing anything,
No,
really.
no. And would you say that, I mean, if people are listening to this who are roughly our age and who feel like, oh, I've not done anything for a while, therefore might as well not bother, that you would say actually now is the time to really keep going with it because, the longer you wait to get back into some sort of movement routine, the harder it'll be and the more you will feel your age as you age.
Mm, yeah, because I think we do. So we lose. If what I'm thinking of is correct, we lose about, what is it, a kilo of muscle a year if we don't do anything to retain it. So
Wow.
just age-related muscle loss
Yeah.
Mm.
is about a kilo a year, I think. But we don't have to lose any of that.
No.
So we can keep it, so you
Hmm.
can maintain it, and you can continue to build it. And it becomes more, I think movement becomes more important because of that. Because, fall risk goes up and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
Yeah.
the more strength you have in your legs, and the more that your joints are supported by muscle, um, and the more you work on different movements, which then challenge your balance and challenge your ability to stand on one leg, or challenge your ability to move in space, like lunges is a balance exercise, right?
Very
Um,
much so. Yeah. Mm.
yeah. And getting up and down off the floor, all of those things
Mm.
just becomes more and more important, because then as you get older, you maintain as much function as possible. And that's got to be good, right? Because then
Yeah.
when you're in your 80s, you're still skipping down the street. That is hilariously why I began training as a kid in the first place. Because some guy came to my assembly, random guy, I don't know why, came and gave us an assembly. And he said, if you look after your heart now, it will always be stronger. So if you start now, you will be strengthening your heart in a way that is, um, like, that will convey benefits right the way through your life. And I was
Hmm.
very easily influenced, still am. And I was like, okay. And so I just I did stuff. I was on like all the
Um,
sports teams and things because I kind of naturally quite coordinated. But he had a really big impact on me.
that's
Wow.
amazing.
Mm,
It's things like I quite like seeing Dick Van Dyke, keeping going at the age of 99 and sort of, and he,
yeah,
talks about he used to work out for these reasons and now he works out because of pure defiance, and he's like,
yeah,
but it is possible and it's kind of not limiting yourself to,
Mm,
and in running, and I sort of keen runner, but it's running is actually something you can get better at as you get older. And it's an interesting, it sort of develops as you get older and you get more experience as a runner. And I have a friend who started running in her 40s and is about to turn 70 and has done so many marathons and it
cool.
has just got stronger, and it's just beautiful to watch. And it's not, you are valid whether you do 5 minutes of movement or 50 movements or no movement, you are as valid as anybody else. But don't limit yourself in terms of what you think is no longer possible for you because you are a certain age. That's all I would say.
mm,
Yeah,
Um,
mm.
definitely.
Yeah, there's so many excuses. I mean, I see it in my own family. There's, oh no, I've got my mum's got COPD. I can't walk very far. And I'm thinking, well, if you walked a bit further, maybe your lungs would work a little bit better and maybe your muscles would be a little bit stronger. But I hear that so many times with older people. They've got excuse after excuse after excuse. And I feel like just adding a little bit of movement in would probably make you feel a lot better and stronger. Um, So I don't know. What do you think, Trey?
I think movement definitely can do those things. And I also think that the stories we tell ourselves about what we're capable of
Mm,
are a huge part of whether or not we can access those benefits, because of whether we can kind of get past the barrier and into the movement in the first place.
yeah.
I used to have a client who she's like very still someone that kind of like stays in my heart, because she struggled so hard to come to me in the first place. She had kind of like agoraphobia to quite a degree. Um, and it took her ages and ages and ages, she was telling me, to kind of even make contact with me. And then she used to manage to get herself to my gym every day, every week. And what we did together was develop her walking fitness from I get out of breath after 20 seconds to I can walk to the park, which is 6 minutes away, with me. But then when she wasn't with me, she couldn't go anywhere beyond her back garden. So we used to get her walking around her back garden, and that was the thing.
Mm.
And one of the things I've always had a lot of that has defined my entire career, I think, is understanding those barriers that people have towards
Mm,
fitness and why they find it hard to start, and
mm,
then seeing how I can help get rid of those barriers,
yeah.
because there's so many, and they're so
Mm,
like deep,
mm,
and they break your heart a lot of the time.
And
mm,
you know what I would say? I don't like the word excuses, Ella.
mm. Go on. What do
So
you use
I
instead?
don't like, because that to me is diet culture. That just to me,
Right.
um no excuses, never miss a Monday, blah blah.
Mm,
And as Trey's saying, there's so many complex reasons as to why somebody doesn't move or hasn't
mm,
moved, and so many barriers that do you know what I mean?
mm.
That the no ex I know where you were coming from, by the way.
Yeah, yeah.
I
So I
know you
suppose
didn't mean it in that way at all.
no, but I
But,
think barrier is probably a much better word for
yeah.
it, because excuse sounds very much like, oh, I can't be bothered.
Mm,
Mm.
But there is obviously something there stopping you from doing it, and it's exploring, well, what is it that's stopping you,
yeah.
and how can we
Yeah.
overcome that, rather than, yeah, I get you,
Precisely.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I'll take it all back. Rewind, everybody. I did not say that. I
Oh,
did.
it's interesting
But yeah,
because
no,
that
no,
will
that's
be
that's a really good point. Yeah.
people will define it to themselves as that.
Yeah.
Mm,
No,
Yeah.
I've heard that 1,000 times from the people themselves. I'm just like, I know, I'm just I know what to do, but I just can't do it. And then they'll kind of
mm,
I think people find it very hard to believe that their own reasons are valid.
Yeah.
You know what
mm,
I mean? And so they'll kind of give themselves a real hard time over it, just being like, there's no reason why I shouldn't do this. And you're like, but there are.
mm.
Quite clearly there are, because otherwise you'd be doing it.
You'd be doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I always look to my own behavior, because I find exercise relatively easy at this point in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I find it or so I didn't train over the weekend. Didn't work out over Saturday or Sunday, um, for various reasons. And I felt really achy on Monday. I felt really achy and sore and uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
way more than when I do work out. Like I feel sore today, but in a completely different way.
Different. Yeah.
Yeah, and my brain registers that type of soreness as very positive, and the other type of soreness is not very positive,
Mm-hmm.
in the
Mm.
sense of I quite enjoy this soreness, but I don't enjoy that other kind. But I find exercise relatively easy. But if you ask me how my learning to play a drum kit is going, I could give you reason after reason after reason after reason as why I do not pick up my sticks and go and sit out in that room and play my drums. And it's because the biggest one is that when I sit down at my kit and start trying to play the piece that I'm trying to play, I'm so bad at it that it's really unsatisfying. And
Mm,
because it's so unsatisfying, I don't want to do it.
mm,
And I do that specifically so that I can try and tap into the mindset of someone coming to exercise for the first time.
mm-hmm.
Because when you say, okay, I just need you, like I'm just going to suggest that you do 1 minute of squats or 1 minute of whatever it is, jumping jacks or knee raises or whatever it is that the person wants to do. And they're like, okay, I can do that. And then they come back the next week and they're like, no, I didn't do it. And it's because it's unsatisfying. I didn't enjoy it. It felt like nothing to me. It felt really
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
like, or there was a lot of mistakes in it. And so it just felt unpleasant. And that is how drumming feels to me. And that's how kind of exercise often feels to complete beginners when they haven't got the ability to do what they want. Because I want to sit at that kit and be able to play the full piece, like boom.
Yeah, of course.
And I
Yeah.
know that's going to take practice, and I know that I'm going to be rubbish at it for ages. I know all of those things. And yet that's still sufficient to stop me from picking the sticks up in the first place.
Oh,
So you
that's
can empathize with the people who just can't get into a routine with exercise, basically.
Yeah. And I think it's a good exercise for coaches to do, to go to do something that they find really hard. Because I think, especially as fitness coaches, it's quite easy to get into that. Fitness is fun. It's like, well,
Not for everyone.
don't do something you don't think is fun and tell
yeah.
me how much enjoyment you get out of that, and try and do that every other day. Or
I had this exact conversation earlier with, I've got an ADHD coach at the minute, which is really nice, just for a few sessions. And I was like, I dread going to dance every week. I dread it. It's contemporary dance, and I'm not very good. But it is good for me because it's like you're trying to follow instruction, you're trying to do what you're being told, and my body won't move, and it doesn't quite. I'm like, what did you say? And how do I? And it is really good for me as a coach.
yeah,
Even though I don't want to go every week, it is
yeah.
really good for me to go and just see how hard it is. I think that's brilliant, Trey, that you do that with the drums.
Well, like same. And
Yeah.
I did a couple of dance classes not last year, maybe the year before. So I really wanted to get into dance more. And I was trying to do it in my little gym, right? So I was like crashing into the squat rack and like my medicine ball pile and all these things on the floor and just generally in the way. My gym is not big enough. But I was really surprised because I'm quite coordinated, really
Yeah.
surprised how I could not translate what he was doing on the screen and what he was saying to me and how he was instructing me into some sort of like fluid movement in my body. It would not go through. And I know it's just practice,
Yeah.
but yeah, that really surprised me. And I did a couple classes and then felt like too much of a wally. So I was just like, I can't do this. I can't
Oh.
do this.
It's
I
also
probably,
interesting to hear you both talk about that because it reminds me of the thing that, we kind of always want to do something that we're good at. So there is some part of us that has this sort of perfectionistic tendency to, I can only do this if I'm legit good at it. And if not, then I might as well not bother. That's why I liked the story about your client earlier who never did what you said or never did what you demonstrated, Christine, where I just thought, well, she had fun. She was moving. And isn't that the goal, that we move? And I'm just thinking all of these things that we don't let ourselves do because we're rubbish at them, that kind of defeats the object of actually just doing something that we can enjoy, because it is, I suppose it is a lot more enjoyable when we take away that pressure of doing it perfectly, because then we can focus on, is this actually giving us joy? And if it doesn't, well, sod it, don't do it. But if it does, sod it, it doesn't have to be perfect. That's why I'm sort of thinking it's great that you're both doing those things and doing it regardless of whether you're ever going to be good at it or not. If it's fun, Trey, if it's fun to dance, dance,
yes.
right?
I think it's one of the things that comes into my brain when I think about all of this is, did you know James Clear's ideas about what makes a habit sticky? Like it needs to be satisfying, obvious, and whatever the other two are. But the satisfying one is really like crucial.
Mm,
And it's how you derive satisfaction from something that you are inherently bad at this moment in time.
yeah.
That's the thing. It's like, right,
Mm,
can I find satisfying
mm,
about hitting my drum kit when I can't get my leg that's hitting the kick drum and my hands to hit the
yeah.
correct drum at the correct time? It's like,
Mm,
where's the satisfaction coming from?
mm,
And so finding it other places that you can
mm,
get that from becomes part of the practice. So it
mm,
might just be that you did it, that you
mm,
tick it off or whatever it is.
mm,
Or it might be kind of in dance, just listening to the music and then being
mm,
kind of part
mm.
of that. But you have to start thinking more broadly
Yeah.
because you're like, well, this bit, it's not coming from this bit,
No.
that's for sure. So where is
Yeah.
it going to come from? And you have to do that. I do that a lot with my clients as well.
Mm.
I'm like, I
Um,
know this sucks at the minute and it feels crap to you. So how are we gonna drum up like some satisfaction in this practice so that you can at least derive something from it that feels good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I
Even
love,
retrospectively, I suppose,
yeah.
once you've done the workout or whatever it is, you probably feel
Yeah.
much better for it for whatever reason. So just having the sort of retrospective satisfaction might be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you get into that before you do it,
Yeah.
you can kind of throw yourself forward. I know I'm
Yeah.
going to feel X afterwards.
Yeah.
Then yeah, then you get in somewhere.
Yeah.
We are going to have to wrap this up because we've gone over quite a long way over because it's been such a good conversation. I have loved this conversation, Ella.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we could go on for ages, but yeah, we probably
definitely.
need to wrap it up.
We haven't seen Dexy, which is very sad.
No,
Yeah.
he's in his bed having a sleep. Bless
I
him.
know.
Bless him.
Oh, that's well, Trey, it's been an absolute joy. And oh, before you go, tell us where we can contact you, where we can sign up to the Strength Crew or find out more about it.
Okay. At the moment, Instagram is where I hang out, and I just changed my handle this morning, so it's
I like it.
yeah. Oh, cool. It's at Trey, so TREY __ Strength Crew. That's where I am. That's where I do everything that I'm doing. I'm on Substack, but pretty much all my Substack blogs make it onto my Instagram eventually.
I love Substack.
It's such a nice place.
I love it. Honestly, I follow so many people on Substack. Ella, are you on Substack?
I am on Substack. It totally overwhelms me because there's so much I want to read and then I don't read
know.
anything
Yes,
because it's too
I
much.
have that problem.
Yeah.
I have that problem.
I just love it. But Trey, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And yeah, we will speak to you again. We have to say this. We're going to have to do a part 2, Ella.
We do,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, once the Strength Crew is properly up and running, we want to hear how it's going.
Cool.
All
right, let's do it.
All right, thanks.
Thank you so much.